I'm Liz Gunn, and I come from a background as a lawyer and then years in mainstream media. I now do freelance media, and I stood in the recent election in New Zealand. As part of my standing in that election, a man approached me and asked me if I would talk about, with him, some statistics, some data, a large body of data that he was brave enough to come forward and offer in order to help the world. I can tell you that I have never worked on such a detailed case. I have never worked on such a demanding story in all my years in both law and media as this one. It has demanded fastidious attention to detail, and we have taken it to statisticians here in New Zealand and elsewhere around the world. There is a purpose to this. The purpose is to bring down the greatest evil, I believe, that has been perpetrated on the most human beings around the world at the same time. To that end, I cannot put into words the courage of this man, whom I will now introduce. He's willing to have his face on screen. I have always referred to him by his nickname, which is, ironically, Winston Smith. I do not know his real name, and I am happy with that. Welcome, Winston.
Hello.
Could you tell me what brought you to this point of such courage?
It's because I love humanity so much is the reason. And I know that bad things happen when good people do nothing. And I may not be a good person, but I'm not a bad person either. And so this is my reason, is because the chances of us being here on this planet as humans is 400 trillion to 1. Each of us. The chances of this, me being me, you being you, 400 trillion to 1. So we are a unique creation. We are the universe's most special, one of the most treasured creations of the universe. I'm going to have to do this again now.
No,
just go with it. All right,
this is
okay.
beautiful. This is
so
beautiful.
this is, yeah, each part of us, we are made from the stuff of the universe, stardust, right? So that means it's every atom in our bodies is at least 4.5 billion years old. So we are so precious, every single one of us. So can we go again?
Just keep pressing on.
All right. So I'll start again, shall I? I just got to get this out, lasses.
Let's
keep going. Just keep
tapping
rolling.
of the table too, because.
All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So
okay,
my reason.
Let's do it again.
My voice is all over.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And if you look at me, it's going to calm you a little bit, because looking at the camera, it makes, just look at me and be with me.
All right.
Yeah. Look at me and be with me.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm all right.
Yeah.
It's not
beautiful.
crying. It's just my voice.
It's beautiful.
Right.
Take some nice breaths.
My reason why is because
and just take a look at me. Okay, I'm going to ask the question again.
Yeah.
Welcome, Winston Smith, which is the name I know you as.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Welcome, Winston Smith.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call you.
Yeah.
What brought you to this point of such incredible courage that you were willing to speak out and take this risk?
Well, sometimes it's harder to look than to leap. And basically I saw too much that I couldn't do nothing anymore. And someone said that bad things happen when good people do nothing. And that was obvious during World War II, when Germany went and killed millions of innocent people. We know that they're not all bad people. Germans are not all bad people. So there were good people, they just followed orders. They were just told what to do and just went along with it.
Bad things happen when good people do nothing.
Exactly, yeah. So this is one of the reasons why this is happening now, is because good people are not doing enough to stop it. So we are, as humans, we are one of the universe's most treasured creations. We are, each one of us, incredibly unique and rare. There's a every chance of us being here is 400 trillion to 1, each one of us, okay? So the chance of us meeting here is off the scale. We are like, there are more stars in the known universe than the chance of us meeting here today at this point in time. So it's an amazing thing, the universe is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And to enjoy it, to live life is, yeah, it's a gift that we've got to enjoy. So we can't do this. We can't keep doing this. It's too much. All right. So like I said...
Can I pick up something there?
Yeah.
We are looking today at data.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I so wanted and begged you to be willing to discuss that data with me is because you bring to it this humanity, this human face. I've discussed this with others in my team and they said he is so unusual because a statistician often simply sees them as numbers.
Yeah.
You have statistics, you have statistical expertise,
yeah.
but you see each of these as what?
It's a human life. So I know a database administrator. I've been one for 20 years. So it's just letters and numbers. I know that, right? It's just data. This is different. It's because we're seeing human lives being destroyed.
And the families that are around.
This data is a river of tears. And I feel the pain. So I can't go on with it. There is so much pain and tears in this that it's got to end. And I'm going to prove that it is the vaccine that's killing people. It's got to be. It's nothing else. There's no other reason for it. And they might claim that it could be any number of different causes. Anything. They could say it's, the aging population or whatever. It's not. This thing is a killer.
And we have the statistical evidence of that thanks to you.
Absolutely.
Take us, before we get into the data itself, take us to the beginning of your journey. How did this come to you?
Right. Well, I was involved with building a project, helped with implementing a vaccine payment system for our providers. It's called a pay per dose system. So it means that every time someone gets vaccinated, they get a payment for it as a provider. And I helped build it. I implemented it. And when I was looking at the data, which is part of my job, I noticed some discrepancies with the dates of death, people dying within a week of being vaccinated.
So what did you notice when you first started to look at this data as you were building it?
Well, as soon as the system went live, we noticed that people were dying almost straight away after being injected. So that sort of prompted my curiosity a bit. And so I dug a little deeper. And I am a scientist by nature. I love science. It's my all-time favorite. I've got a master's degree in science. So I get it. And it's real science. It's not at the speed of science, fake science that Fauci spouts. It's actually the Carl Sagan version of science, which is, if you know back to the days of Cosmos, that beautiful series that he did. That, to me, crystallized the whole essence of what humanity is about. We are the universe's creation. We are the universe's way of thinking about itself. So it's a beautiful thing. Science is all about being skeptical and curious. At the same time, we shouldn't be criticized for being skeptical. We shouldn't be vilified for having a different opinion. We should be allowed to have that. This is what science is. It's not about consensus. It's not about what people say. This is the science. The science is being different, asking questions.
Being brave.
Throughout history, exactly. Throughout history, we've had the great scientists of our times. We've had, the Copernicuses, the Keplers, Da Vinci. We've had all these guys, Newton, Einstein, they've all said things which were different to the consensus. And they've all had the courage to do that. And they've all said, hang on a minute, this universe isn't quite what we think it is. Maybe try this. And they've all been vilified for that, but then proven right at a later stage. That is what science is. It's not what we're being told science is by the likes of Fauci. Absolutely not. That is not. So,
or Baker, or Wiles, or Bloomfield.
Exactly.
Here. So the very term settled science is not a possible description of science.
Science is never settled.
Yeah.
It can't be. It's an evolving thing.
Then we know it's a con.
If it was settled science, we'd be living on a flat earth and it would be center of the universe. It's not. We know that because of the guys that have gone before us, who've had the courage to say the earth is not the center of the universe. It is round. It goes around the sun. And the sun is just one of the many stars in the universe.
One of the things I know of you is you have never also been anti-vaccination. Tell us about that.
I'm not anti-vax. Absolutely not. I have been vaccinated in the past. Whether or not I get another one is a different story. But I've not been anti-vax. I'm perfectly fine. I helped build a vaccination system. So there's no way I'm anti-vax. But I am pro-choice. And I do believe in fundamental freedoms of humans. And that we should not have a procedure forced onto us because of a mandate just to keep our jobs. That is against everything I stand for. That is a huge overreach by the government. And I was not happy with that. I was absolutely not happy with it.
So someone like you would always respect my choices for my body.
Exactly.
Even if you didn't have the same for your body.
Exactly. It's a Nuremberg Protocol. I mean, that came after World War II, for God's sake, after the Mengele experiments, all those people, all those horrible things that happened in those death camps. We had this Nuremberg Accord where we would never do this again. And now we're reversing it and we're starting to do it. It's like, okay, if you want to keep your job, if you want to survive, if you want to go on holiday, if you want to go to the movies, if you want to do anything, live your life, you've got to have this procedure and a vaccine pass to let you in.
If you're young and you want to go to university, if you want to go to a music festival for the rest of your life, you must do what we want.
Exactly. So this is against everything that I thought the Western civilization was about, freedoms and that we just naturally take for granted. It's like the last 2 years have been an absolute nightmare. We've just gone back to 1984. It's like living an Orwellian nightmare for the last 2 years. Like literally, I could not believe what came out. The Vax Pass, the mandates, the lockdowns. And freedom of information. Anyone who had a different opinion, anyone who said, hang on a minute, this is not quite right, was shut down. It's like, this is insane. Where is the freedom of debate? Why can't we talk about it? What about the COVID lab, the lab leak theory and Wuhan? Why did that get shut down straight away? And now it's been proven as like, that's the most likely cause. But when you mentioned it right at the start, you were banned from Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
And we all know here in New Zealand, a Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, who said, we are your one source of truth. If that isn't Orwellian, I don't know what else is.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That was absolutely, she said a few things that were like off the charts Orwellian. And when she came in, I thought she was great, like everyone else, young person and all that. I am Labour background through and through. So I'm not alt-right, I'm not right-wing. I'm from the northeast of England, which is as Labour as it comes. My home village, the street names, we had street names like Engels Terrace, Lenin Terrace. So you couldn't get more left-wing than that. So I'm not alt-right, I'm just a fan of humanity and I want this to end. So there's no politics in here. It's not left-right. It's just truth.
There's no ideology I've picked up from you. You simply have, as a scientist, approached a body of information. Now take us to those early days. You are working for the New Zealand Ministry of Health.
Yep.
You are building this site.
Yep.
And you are starting to ask questions.
Yep.
What happened then?
So what I did was some investigations into, what is actually going on, because I didn't believe the media. I've always questioned the media. I've been awake for, at least 10 years. So,
What do you mean by awake?
awake is like, you kind of know that when you're being lied to. And I think I'm hopefully going to show people how they're being lied to in this. And yeah, they are. So I just need people to be skeptical. And even if you're being jabbed a dozen times, it doesn't matter. Just look at this data. Just look to see what it says. And that's from a purely statistical, scientific standpoint. Prove me wrong. This is real hard data. It's undeniable data. It's the government's own data. They can't deny it. It's 100%. And so what I did was looking at our government's data that we record on births and deaths. I was just curious to see if the death rate was going up. And sure enough, it was. Yeah, just like everyone else was saying on YouTube, and that there were all these reports coming out saying, oh, the death rate's gone up 6-7% in some countries. So I thought, okay, maybe it's New Zealand the same, and I've got access to that data. And I ran some queries, and yeah, sure enough, it was. So
the first question of the doubters or the mainstream media would be, well, of course it's going up. There was COVID. COVID was causing the deaths, not
yes.
the COVID jab rollout. What do you say to that?
Well, that is a good reason why you would see the death rate going up. But like I said, I'll just show you.
Let's go into the data.
Okay, so I was curious about the death rates, as I said, and what I did was run a query to see how many days where more than 120 people were dying.
Why 120?
Why
that
just
number?
Yeah, it was just a magic number. It was just a line in the sand. It seemed appropriate for New Zealand because we're a small country. It's like in America it would be much higher, obviously in Britain, and so 120 was a magic sort of point where you would see a lot of days where it wasn't 120.
Because that would have been in the past unusual to have
yes,
120
exactly,
daily
yeah, so
deaths.
that is
right.
that is the magic point. If it's lower than that, then it loses its relevance. Because there's lots of days where it's over 100, and you would just see like every day basically over 100. But 120, you get that sort of cutoff point where most days should be under 120, but then you get a few days which are over 120. So what I did was go back to 2010.
I like that. It marks it out as a talking point day. Oh, that's an unusual day. We've had 120 deaths. This was the New Zealand before the jab rollout.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, I get that. So we've got 2011, and we've got the 22nd of February, and we've got 268.
Yeah, and that is the Christchurch earthquake.
So that was a real outlier.
That's an outlier, yeah.
Okay.
And it also validates the data set. So then after that, we've got 2011 again.
2011, but that's February, and again we don't have over 120 deaths until
that's July.
July.
Yeah, but that's the midwinter flu season, and you expect that in the winter more people die. It's just a statistical fact.
And they're just above the 120.
Yeah. So
all right.
Obviously, must have been a fairly bad winter.
So we've had a 5-month gap with no numbers above 120 a day dying.
Yes, exactly.
In New Zealand.
And then the next one down, if you look at that, is
2014.
So we've missed 2 years there where there was no numbers more than 120.
And that is the 8th of August, and we've got 135.
Again, probably flu.
Big gap, 3-year gap.
Middle of winter.
Okay.
A big gap. So again, you've got another one there. And then
that's again in August, so I've obviously got something going on.
Here, which is, winter.
2015, July.
Yeah.
And then 2017.
So we missed another year.
So between 2015 and 2017, New Zealand did not have one day over 120
that's exactly right.
deaths.
And then again,
this is very telling.
2017, you got the midwinter flu season again.
Yep.
2017 must have been quite a bad flu season.
A number of months here. So we're going through from June in 2017 through to August.
Yeah.
We've got August, we're still 2017, but they're all just above, most of them are just above 120 deaths a day.
Apart from
A couple 141,
yeah,
one at 159, all right?
So, but then 2017, 2018, you only have one.
Right?
2019.
2018, we've only got the 2nd of August, we've only got one day, and that's 121 deaths. Then we don't have more than 121 deaths until 2019 in March, the 15th of March.
Right, yeah. And then 2019, again, bad flu season. And then nothing. So if you look at the bottom there, for 1 year, 2020, there's nothing. Right, so 2021, this is before the pandemic as well, by the way. So we have our rollout in the middle of 2021. But 2021 itself, not a big year. Not a big year.
So that's all 2021.
That's right, yeah.
And those are the only days in 2021 before the rollout that were above 120.
Now the vaccine rollout comes into full effect. And we've also got COVID, which I'll refer to in another graph. But 2022, check this out, right?
This is April the 20th, 2022.
Just after the vaccine rollout, yeah. So we've got
151, 128, 137 dead. Wait a minute, this is every day.
yeah. So as you see now, from this point onwards, this just keeps going. And
Almost every day.
and going,
Here it is now, every single day.
going, and going.
And they're all above 120.
Yeah. Still 2022, going.
So already evidence of excess death
This is
in New
excess
Zealand.
mortality, 100%.
Wow. And
Still
still
going.
it's going.
Still going. Now we're heading 2023. Has it stopped? Has it slowed down? Well, you tell me. It's still going.
This is 2023.
We're still in 2023. So,
Where before we had gaps of
Yeah.
months or a year
Yes.
or 2 years,
Yes.
3 years,
yes,
no
now
gaps.
We're not. I'll do that now.
Again, how do we know this is not COVID deaths? COVID, the
because-
pandemic sold to us.
Because the COVID deaths stopped. And I'll show you that on the Worldometer website.
Okay.
You can look at this data yourself. Check it out. Please check it out. The Worldometer website shows that COVID deaths stopped at a certain point in 2022.
We'll look at that in a moment. One of the things you've said to me, Winston, is prove this wrong. Go out of your way to prove this data wrong, that it's linked to the rollout of the COVID jabs. That's what you want, isn't it?
That's what I want. Prove me wrong.
And I will say, while Winston is doing this, he has said to me, I would love to be proved wrong. I wish it was not the jab that was doing this to New Zealanders and to people around the world. I wish I was wrong. Now, that is a man of such sincerity,
Yeah.
but the data is screaming at him what it is.
Well, that's what science is all about. It's you put a theory, a hypothesis up there, and you invite criticism. You want to be shown that it's wrong. Oh God, I wish to my heart that this wasn't a thing. I wish it wasn't what it is.
Yes, I think we both do. It's
Yeah,
horrific.
This has just been it's been a terrible nightmare. So I put this in a chart format so we can see. When I first saw this, I thought, well, what am I really looking at here? So what we have here is a graph of the daily deaths where more than 120 people have died from January the 11th to September 2023. So on the left there, the big red line, is the Christchurch earthquake event. So that is the outlier, and that's a lot of people died on that day. From there, the next line where you get more than 120 people dying is sometime 2012. Then you get nothing for a year. 2013 doesn't have any. 2014, you got a couple. Then nothing, 2016, you got one. Then nothing until 2018, where you get a whole cluster. That's probably due to a flu epidemic, because all these spikes that you see, these black lines previously on the left-hand side, they're all due to the winter flu season. So you've got to remember that. All these deaths happening June, July, August. So there in 2018, we had a big flu epidemic. Moving on to the right, you get another one. Then the next red one, the Christchurch massacre, which was in 2019 in March. But from that, you get a cluster in 2020, a whole bunch there. May have been another bad flu season. We don't know. But then from 2021, midway, you see a black line there appearing. And then it's like a flick of a switch. Suddenly, the black lines get closer together. And there's more of them. Very thick black lines there. So this one here, peak deaths with COVID, with or from COVID. But then the deaths from COVID, if you look at the Worldometer website, it correlates to that. That is the same time. And they say that over 60 people died with or from COVID. Then after that, it suddenly drops off. So after that, you only get a couple of people a day dying with or from COVID. So if you go back to the chart there, in that case, you would expect to see the black lines disappear because no one's dying from COVID anymore, right? But you're not. You're absolutely not. You're seeing the black lines. There are more people dying than ever before. These are the biggest number of deaths we've seen in history of New Zealand. The death rate has gone up 6%, 8% year on year. Even after COVID wasn't a thing, the death rate is still going up. And that's illustrated here by these black lines, which are still going on.
And we're basically getting a Christchurch massacre now on many days in New Zealand.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, that's right. It's like every other day, we're basically seeing another similar number of people in the Christchurch massacre, but it's not being mentioned by anyone in the news. Mainstream media is not picking this up. But there is an increase in the death rate. Nobody's talking about it. But we've got to know why there are excess mortality rates, not just in New Zealand, but across the world. And hopefully we can explain that. This here is daily deaths of more than 120 from January 2020 to September 23. And again, we see the rollouts. Border workers, February 21. Frontline workers, March 21. The elderly.
May 2021. And then the rest.
Yeah.
July 2021.
Okay, look what happens after we've all been injected. These lines start to appear.
And again, we're looking at number of deaths.
Yeah.
Number of
over
deaths.
120. That's the number of deaths over 120 each day with.
And where we see a thick black line, that means a number of days.
Yeah, in a row. Yeah.
So when we get this thickening of the black lines, we
Yeah.
know that there are many days
Many days.
where we've got this excess mortality.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into more specific sites and look at excess deaths from that perspective, Winston.
Okay. So what we have here are the 20 worst sites for excess deaths. That means excess mortality. So of the sites in New Zealand, there are 1,391 individual vaccination sites. And we're looking at the mortality rates of each site. So from that, we look at the top 20. And that's the heat map, and if this was a normal data distribution, you would see more in the big data centers. This is not normal to see them on the South Island like that, because the South Island is not densely populated. So for the excess, it should reflect mortality rates across the whole country, which is the background mortality rate, something like 0.75%. some of these rates will shock you. So this is the slide, but it's in Google Maps now. So again, 20 worst sites for excess mortality rates. And as you see, 10 of them are in Christchurch alone. And you can
Wow.
drill down to that.
Let's have a look. So let's just stop here. And more Christchurch Central as well.
Yeah.
Not out in Littleton, but look at this.
Yeah.
And out near the Antarctic Centre,
Yeah.
St Albans, we've got Sydenham.
Yeah. And yeah, if I just zoom out and show you Invercargill. And if you look on the left-hand side, Invercargill, poor Invercargill, it's they've had an unbelievable experience. They've had a total number of site vaccinations of 837 and a 30% death rate.
30%?
30%. It's almost 1 in 3 people who were vaccinated at this site are now dead.
And what have we got here? The total clusters per site.
Yeah. The clusters we're going to talk about later, but
Right.
this is just the death ratio. The underlying mortality rate should be 0.75% ordinarily. But in this one particular site, we've got a mortality rate of 30%.
That is staggering.
Yeah, and Invercargill, of all places.
What else have we got in the South Island? Can we go in on Gore?
Yeah, and Gore. We have this pharmacy here. They've vaccinated 16 people and almost 20%, 1 in 5 of them are now dead.
And that is La Hood's pharmacy.
Yeah, and Gore. So yes,
What do you make of, if we look at the bigger map, of the South Island focus, concentration?
I can only make assumptions, but something is clearly wrong here. So the vaccine would have come in, however it got to the South Island, we don't know, however it was stored, however it was transported, but something is not right here. So there might be something in the batches themselves. I can only guess at this point, but the statistics are clearly saying that there is something wrong and it's concentrated in the South Island, that their mortality rates are far in excess of what is normal, far in excess.
So we get back to the crucial point of your data to me still, Winston, is this is proving that this is not able any longer to be put down to natural causes, or this would have happened anyway.
Absolutely
the data
not.
takes it away from that.
Exactly. This cannot be a natural event. This is man-made.
We're going to look into that more. I want to add a very poignant point here, Winston. We haven't mentioned this so far, but we are focusing on deaths in New Zealand. For every death, I can only imagine, I referred to this in an earlier message, the number who are injured. We don't have that data here.
We don't have that data here because death is the ultimate adverse event. It's undeniable, it's binary. It's either alive or dead, 1 or 0. Adverse events, we have got no idea. And if it's an adverse event, they can argue about it in courts of law ad infinitum, as you know. But with an adverse event like death, then it's harder to disprove. And statistically, it's very, very difficult for them to disprove this because, as I will show you, stats don't lie. And this is government data.
This is government data, and we don't know the government collection of adverse events data because many people I've interviewed have been told themselves on going in and saying, I believe the jab caused this injury. They've been told you're just anxious.
Yeah.
So we don't have potentially good data.
Nobody knows this data. Nobody but me in New Zealand has seen this data. Now I'm giving it to the world.
Explain why. Explain that.
Because it's a payment system, and I'm the database administrator for it. I'm the only one. Because New Zealand is a small country, you can get away with one database administrator to do this. So I'm in a unique position in the world, and because New Zealand is a tier 1 country with really good IT, I was able to manage and build the system and be the only database administrator needed to look after it. In other countries like America or Britain, you'd need a whole team of people. So it would be very difficult for one person to get access to all of this information. But in New Zealand, because of the size and because it's got really good IT, I happen to be the one. And I think the universe has put me here for this reason.
So New Zealand becomes a seminal example for the world.
Yes.
We are a petri dish here.
Yes, we are. And if it's happening here, guarantee it's happening everywhere. And we need more people like me to stand up and just come out. Don't be scared. Just do it.
There's a lot of emotion when you speak like that. Can you briefly, before we go into the stats, tell me what this journey's been like?
Oh, it's been a roller coaster. But like I said, it's harder to look than to leap. Now I've got to leap. Looking at this data has torn me apart for years. I've got to do something about it. That's what I'm doing.
On that note, to those who say, why didn't you come out sooner? Address that point.
Because the data wasn't there, I had a suspicion. With science, you always question. So obviously question things right at the start to see what's going on. The data wasn't there to do this analysis. Now, a couple of years down the track, we've got a huge body of data. 2.2 million people have been through the system. It's a good data set. It's an accurate data set. It's not 100% complete because there are other systems out there I do not have access to. But this data set is accurate. And I can guarantee statistically correct. So because of the time that it took to gather this data, I couldn't go out right at the start and say, oh, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong. Like one day after it was rolled out, someone died. That's insignificant, unfortunately. And it breaks
insignificant
data-wise, but
yes.
It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It does. It breaks my heart that so many people are lost because of this. And it's the government who are behind it. Why are they doing this? This is their people. They should, if there is a safety signal, any safety signal at all for a vaccine, it should be withdrawn immediately. But they've just ignored everything and just gone straight ahead and just put the headphones on and just ignored it. Ignored all the voices saying, screaming, this is a danger signal. This is a killer. And it is a killer. But they've just gone straight ahead with it. But it has to stop now.
So that implicates Bloomfield as who's been heading up the Ministry of Health. It implicates Ardern. It implicates Hipkins.
Yeah,
all of them.
It absolutely does, but maybe they've got plausible deniability.
Meaning what? Explain
Meaning
that.
what they didn't know, they deliberately didn't know.
Could they not have known this? Is it possible?
Maybe I can't speak to that. All I can say is that the government and the media have ignored voices like ours, like yours, for too long. And when you've got hard data, when you've got government data, it is impossible for them to deny.
So the argument could be they may not have known, but they could have known had they chosen to listen to those of us pleading with them
deliberately
to research.
Deliberately cancelled voices which told them to look at the data, to look deeper. So, and that's gone on across the world. There's people like Trudeau in Canada with the truck drivers. He just didn't listen to anyone. He just went ahead with whatever agenda he had. And I'm not going to talk about that. That is a separate thing. All I want to talk about here is the actual data, the facts.
We know there are brave politicians across the world pleading still. Andrew Bridgen in the UK.
Absolutely.
These people deserve to be heard now.
Absolutely, and they will be heard. The people will not be silent on this because, he stood in Parliament, brought me to tears when he did his speech, and there was a huge uproar in the public gallery. It's like, this is what Parliament is about. This is the people speaking. And he said at the time, this is not the first debate on excess deaths in the world, but it is the first debate, but it'll not be the last. It will not be the last.
But he was there in an empty parliamentary gallery,
Yes.
except for the public.
Except for the people. And there were thousands outside. And the people will know when something is not right. And it's getting to that point now. The people in Invercargill, in Gore, will know there's something not quite right. And this is the answer. This is what we're going to tell them now. Look deeper, question. Because you will know that it doesn't seem right. Well, why are all the old people dying? That they've never had so many old people die before. Statistically, this explains why. It can only be from the vaccine. It can only be from that. No other explanation can be used to explain it.
It's not normal, but here we have the data saying why. Let's look further into it. What else have we got here?
Okay, so that's the heat map from the whole of New Zealand, and we've talked about that. And
showing
Gore and
excess
Christchurch, this is the ratio of excess deaths, and statistics, we'll get onto that in a bit. Here are the ratios for the top 20. So if you look at the top right there, the average New Zealand death rate, the mortality rate is 0.75. 0.75%. That means 7 people per 1,000 will die in 1 year. So there you see the top sites with mortality rates way above that, way above that.
This is huge. So if it had been safe and effective, we would have expected 0.75%.
Yes.
What we
Across all
have
these sites.
so site total death count, and we've got total site vaccinations. So this is really official data. And we've got 31%.
Nearly 32. So of those 191 people who were vaccinated at that care home, 61 of them are now no longer with us.
Wow. And I would remind people, we were sold the jab to protect the old people.
Exactly.
And this, in terms of temporal connection to the jab, there will be a time connection. It won't be too long after the jabs, will it?
We don't know, a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
That is data that is captured, but we will have to analyse that at a later date, because all I'm trying to get out now is the general statistics. I mean, these numbers, these should be for all age groups. Maybe you've got one like a care home may be elderly, the average age may be 80, but even so, even if you think that the age group is 80 to 90, the mortality rate of that age group is maybe 20%, not 31%.
32%.
Or 32%.
The reason I asked about the temporal connection is I know the third site, which I've looked at in detail with you, and we'll get to that, where we have a 30% rate. I know that the jabbing took place in very close time frame in some of those groups, and that the deaths were within a few months. We'll look at that in a moment. But look at the numbers.
Yeah, and this is a big data set which makes it statistically more relevant. The higher the number of vaccinations, the more accurate the statistics are going to be. So we've got 837 with a death count of 253, so 30%. Almost 1 in 3 people who got vaccinated at this site are now no longer with us.
And that site, Queen's Park, is in Invercargill. And here we have another residential elder care services. We've got 923 of them jabbed, 276 dead, which brings us to nearly 30%.
And again, to your point, that the vaccination was promoted to protect the elderly, to save them. So what is it exactly saving them from if they were going to die anyway? How much longer did it buy them? Are we talking a week, a month? What was the purpose?
Here's one of our Christchurch ones, the doctors, Christchurch South, We've got 48 vaccinations, 12 dead. That brings it to a quarter of those jabbed dead.
Yeah.
That's way above the odds.
Way above the average, yeah.
When we take it back to
It should not
0.75.
be that. That's exactly right. And a lot of sites have got the mortality rates under 1%, which is what you would expect. So there is something going on here that cannot be explained.
All right, Winston, let's look more specifically at batches. A lot of people want to know, what was my batch? What can you do to help Kiwis with that?
Okay, so what I did with the data was look at the top 10 batches that had a high death count, a high mortality rate, and I put them on a chart, which you can see up there. So it's got a batch ID, which is our internal number for a batch, but you can easily get the Pfizer batch ID from that. It shouldn't be too difficult.
Tell us more about that, because a lot of people will say, hey, that's only the top 10. I want to know my batch. What would you advise?
Yep, you can do that. There's a website, Find My Batch, for the whole world that can actually find that. We can list this on a website, the whole number of batches. There are 119 individual batches so far in New Zealand, 119.
Of the Pfizer?
Of the Pfizer. Actually, no, of all of them, because we have Moderna, we have AstraZeneca, but they're only few and far between. Mostly it's Pfizer. Mostly it's Pfizer in New Zealand.
So people can find that?
Yeah.
Find my batch?
Yes, they should be able to, yes.
Hello.
So what I did was our internal batch ID, I counted the number of vaccinated within that batch, and then I found out who was dead.
Wow, let's have a look.
And so we then look at the percentage ratio.
So do we know if these are all Pfizer, the top 10?
Yes, they are.
And this is Pfizer's batch number 1. We've had 711 from batch number 1 vaccinated. 152 of those died, which makes a 21%
Percentage, yeah.
death
That's the
rate.
mortality rate from that
Mortality
particular
rate.
batch.
They are high. Now, what's our normal that we would
It should
expect?
be underlying
0.75.
mortality rate, 0.75.
0.75.
Because these batches are against all age groups as well. It's not one particular batch for one particular age group, it's across all ages. So all the vaccination centres, whoever rocked up on the day, whatever age you were, and it would average out. It would all average out. So there's not one particular batch that points to one particular age group.
So looking as if batch number 8, the second one, 221 jabbed, 38 dead. That's a 17% mortality rate.
Yeah.
Batch number 3 here, and we've got 48 out of 310, so that's a 15%.
Yeah.
And if we go right down, in the top 10, batch 71, 11,000 vaccinated with batch number 71, 498 dead, and that's a 4%. Now you say down the bottom on the screen, could you just tell us what this is saying? The chances of these batches not being a killer are 100 billion to 1. Explain that as a statistician.
Yep. Well, if you look at the underlying mortality rate, and then you look at the ratio percentage here, the top one, the chances of that occurring naturally by chance is almost impossible. It cannot be due to chance. So statistically, what we're saying is that there is no chance that this vaccine is not a killer.
So with
So
the
we
100
would
billion
have
to 1,
yeah.
are you saying you'd have to jab?
We would have to jab 100 billion people to get these statistics.
Wow.
And we've got 2.2 million on our system.
2.2 million Kiwis.
2.2 million Kiwis. And we would have had to have jabbed 100 billion of them to get these kind of results.
Now a statistician will know exactly what that
what
means.
they say is almost impossible. Almost impossible.
Because they'll never rule it out completely.
Yeah.
A statistician will never say.
99.9999. A lot of nines. So it's, literally it's an impossible event. So you're looking at causality. If we rule out chance, then what else do we have?
What was happening at the time?
What else do
The
we have
rollout
to
of the jab.
cause these deaths? And it can only be the vaccine. That's the only thing left.
Because if we look at this, we remember that the number of COVID deaths by now was dropping way down.
Yep. And
So we always keep
these
that
are
in
all
mind.
across all age groups as well. So it's not one particular age group, it's across the general population. So the background mortality rate, 0.75, should be reflected in all these batch numbers, but it's not.
Wow.
So we
I mean,
have to ask
this
why.
is alarming. Even look at the second from the bottom. Batch number 62, 18,000 vaccinated, 831 dead. And that's still nearly a 5% ratio against 0.75.
Yeah. And the next one I looked at was, there are different ways to look at the data. You can slice it and dice it. So another way I looked at it was, are the vaccinators themselves, what are they doing? Are we looking at some who have got a higher mortality rate than others? And sure enough, if we look at the next one, unfortunately there are. So what we have here are the top 10 vaccinators who have the highest ratios of mortality.
For privacy reasons, we have redacted the names of those jabbed and the names of those jabbing.
Yeah, we have to.
We have.
We have to.
So we've just
Because-
called it Vaccinator 1.
Yeah, but these are individuals. These are real people. These are real numbers. This is government data. So the top V1 has vaccinated 246 people, and 60 of them are now no longer with us. And
That
that's
is nearly
25%.
25%.
1 in 4, nearly 1 in 4 that person vaccinated is now dead. And you can come up with any number of reasons for it, but this should never happen. This should never happen. If they were all doing their job correctly, if there's a normal vaccine, it would be 0.75.
And if you were arguing, okay, there was one vaccinator who was incompetent, not doing the job properly, that's an aberration. But look at the other numbers.
Yeah.
So it looks, then we start to say, what is it they were putting into people's bodies? Because the uniformity is what they were putting in. Look at this one.
Yeah.
621 by vaccinator, the third highest vaccinator. 621, 104 people dead. Nearly 17% of the people they jabbed.
Yeah. And unless they're going round terminally ill cancer wards and injecting people who they know are going to die, then there is no other explanation for this data. And why would they be doing that anyway? You know, it doesn't make any sense. The vaccine is meant to protect those people. It's meant to protect the old or the ill. But it looks like we have a huge mortality rate.
Look at this one, the fifth vaccinator 5, 1,682 jabbed, and of those 239 dead. These are big numbers for people who've been jabbing New Zealanders to live with. Big numbers. Now explain a cluster because not everybody gets that concept.
So what I found with the clusters is that if you go to a vaccination centre, within a few hours, there'll be a few hundred people gone there. And you're all vaccinated, and now you're no longer with us. If you're vaccinated within the same time period, that is a cluster. So what I looked at was groups of 3 or more. So if you're vaccinated one after the other and you're no longer with us, that is a cluster. But what I found here, and the big one, which I'm just going to show you, which is the one in Invercargill, sorry. Queen's Park Medical Outreach.
Again, we're back in the South Island.
Yeah.
back in the South
Queen's
Island
Park
with
Medical.
way more
Yeah. Just find that
excess
one here.
death groups than
Yeah,
the North
there
Island.
it is there on the big screen.
Down here.
And their ratio is 30%.
So what we've got here, 18 clusters, 18
Yeah.
3 or more deaths per day from a cluster.
Yeah. And I'll just bring the...
And here we've got 10 clusters of 3 to 10 deaths per day, 3 clusters of 11 to 20 deaths per day, and four clusters of 21 to 30 deaths per day.
Yeah.
So there are numerous clusters from this one site,
This one side.
which is Queen's Park Medical in Gala Street in Invercargill down here. We've got an unusually high number of clusters.
This is incredible.
Why is it incredible? Explain.
It should never happen. Statistically, this is impossible. Unless there's something wrong with the vaccine.
So massive death.
Yeah. A huge ratio.
Just explain, so that site death ratio, normally it's 0.75% and we've got 30%.
Yep. And I'll show you one of the clusters if you just give me a moment. I'll just put this on the big screen if I can. Let me just escape that.
I'd like to go into the details of the clusters because I'd also like to look at the timing on the jabs to see if there was proper due diligence done in terms of taking case histories, in terms of talking to people about any hesitations they might have had, all of that sort of due diligence that we assumed would be done in relation to a vaccine. If we look at the timing on these jabs, we may well see that that simply would not be possible.
Exactly.
So that begs the question, was there informed consent to the jabs?
Exactly. And if you look at the times of the vaccination, you'll see that that would be impossible.
Winston, I know when I call you a hero that it doesn't exactly sit with you. For me, anybody with the courage to speak the truth in the face of risks, particularly from a would-be tyrannical government, a government here in New Zealand and many governments around the world that are silencing the truth to the point where they're willing to even put people in jail for telling the truth to the people of the world. To me, that is heroic, what you are doing, what you have offered to the people of New Zealand and the world in this interview. Why do you demur when I say you're a hero?
For the record, I'm not a hero. I don't want to be known as a hero. It's not who I am. The heroes in all of this are the guys who stood up at the gates of the Freedom March, who were brave enough to say no to this, who were brave enough to push back. They were the ones who were called by the guys in Parliament a river of filth, when no one went down to see them. The real river of filth were the ones inside the chamber on that day. People like Mallard, who turned the water and music on at 3 o'clock in the morning when there was children there in the middle of a hurricane. That was just awful what happened there. Those guys who stood there, they're the heroes. I really mean that. They are beautiful people. And the ones who took the rubber bullets, the women who took rubber bullets from the police, who are meant to protect us and serve us, they're the heroes, not me. The ones who stood firm and lost their jobs just because they were told to get a procedure that they didn't want, and they were brave enough to say no, they're the heroes. I'm not a hero.
And that goes around the world to the heroes in Canada who inspired many of us, the truckers, and you got punished by Trudeau, who I see as Jacinda's evil twin. You got punished, your bank accounts were shut down, but you were heroes to us in New Zealand. There were many in London who marched, those people in Melbourne in Australia who also took rubber bullets when they were on a cenotaph, a memorial to what our forebears did to fight tyranny in World War I. But Winston, without you, these jabs could still go on. And without this information, we could find that someone like Bill Gates, heading the World Health Organization, basically, the Gates Foundation is running that corrupt organization. Without this, we could be finding that another planned demic, another manipulated event could occur in which all people of the world are force jabbed.
Yeah.
What do we say to the people of the world who can never go along with this? Again, a forced jab. What is the message?
If this goes somewhere to end in it, what we've experienced in the last 2 years, if it helps in any way, then I've done my job. We've taken a wrong turn down a very dark road over the last 2 years. Humanity, the whole of humanity, not just New Zealand, like everyone. And the further we go down this road, the harder it's going to be to get off it. And if I shine a light back to the main road, so be it. I've done my job. We have to get back to where we are as a human species, as a race, as the custodians of this planet. If we do this to ourselves, then there's no future for us. We cannot allow this to happen in generations to come. We're doing this for our children so that they don't have to experience this. This is not where we should be. This is not where we want to be. At this point in time, we cannot allow this to happen again.
That's powerfully said, and any conspiracy theorist, to my mind, deserves also enormous praise, showing a capacity for critical thinking. Conspiracy theorists should be a term of honour, a capacity to bear ostracism from society, a capacity to continue to critically think, to stand outside the herd, to say, I know it's wrong and I will continue to speak up. I think we have to look at these manipulative terms designed to silence. When we have censorship, we no longer have democracy.
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of scientists in the past were called conspiracy theorists. Some were prosecuted for it. And all we're doing is trying to speak the truth. And as history shows us, some of the people we've thought were conspiracy theorists have been proved absolutely right. Like if you said right at the start that the Wuhan lab leak theory was a thing, you were a conspiracy theorist. Now it's shown pretty much beyond doubt that it actually came from the lab. And then if you said, well, Fauci's behind it because he was doing gain of function research. Again, if he said that earlier, you were a nut. But now it's actually coming out that he was doing gain of function and he was behind the whole thing. He was behind the virus. So yeah, it's just a question of history. Which side of history are you on? And as it pans out, will history prove you to be right or prove you to be wrong? And I think in a lot of cases, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. In the future, you'll be labeled as someone who just knew what it was at the time.
A different kind of hero.
Maybe.